Who once made you feel seen, appreciated, and important. The shift in her energy is almost imperceptible at first. Maybe she starts pulling away subtly, questioning your worth in indirect ways. You try harder because that's what you were taught love is, effort, patience, loyalty. But there comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes explosive, when you finally realize she no longer values you. And that realization hits deeper than you expected. It stirs something in your core. But before you detach, before you even take that first step away, you must do something that most men are never taught how to do. You must acknowledge the pain. Pain is not weakness. It's not failure. It's evidence that something mattered to you. And it's crucial to recognize that pain without using it to excuse her behavior. When someone stops valuing you, they're making a choice. And while their choice may hurt, it's not your responsibility to carry the weight of their decision on your back. Many men try to rationalize it. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe if I change, she'll come back. Maybe she's just going through something. These are defense mechanisms. They are stories we tell ourselves to delay facing the truth. Because the truth, being devalued by someone you gave your heart to, feels unbearable. But here's the reality. Just because it hurts doesn't mean you're supposed to stay. Just because you feel lost doesn't mean she was right for you. Acknowledging the pain is not about holding on to it. It's about facing it directly so it doesn't rule you from the shadows. It's about saying, yes, this hurts. Yes, I feel rejected, betrayed, dismissed. And in the same breath, refusing to let that pain become your identity. You see, the emotional trap is thinking that if you stay long enough, love enough, or suffer enough, she'll return to valuing you. But that's not how relationships work, not healthy ones. When someone truly values you, you don't have to beg for clarity, for consistency, for care. And when that value is gone, the longer you ignore it, the deeper the self-abandonment becomes. Emotional detachment doesn't begin by shutting down. It begins by feeling fully and still choosing to walk away. And let me be clear, this isn't about becoming cold or emotionally numb. It's about maturing emotionally to the point where you understand that your feelings are valid, but not all of them are rooted in truth. Pain will tell you that you've lost something irreplaceable, but wisdom will remind you that what you truly lost was an illusion, because someone who genuinely loves and respects you wouldn't place you in this position in the first place. So, sit with your pain. Let it rise. Let it speak. But don't negotiate your value with it. Don't rewrite the past to make her mistreatment look like a momentary lapse. Don't shrink yourself trying to fit back into a space where you were only half loved. The moment you try to justify her lack of appreciation, you begin to devalue yourself. And that is where emotional detachment dies before it even begins. The foundation of emotional detachment is not bitterness, it's clarity. It's understanding that what hurts now is the death of the illusion, not the death of love. You loved, you tried, but love in its purest form is mutual. It's respect, it's recognition. And when those disappear, so must your emotional attachment. You're not walking away because you don't care. You're walking away because you finally do about yourself. There's a point in every relationship where you must stop looking at the feelings and start paying attention to the facts. You may still love her, you may still care deeply, but feelings alone cannot sustain something that no longer stands on mutual respect. And when a woman no longer values you, that shift begins with a subtle erosion of respect. It fades quietly at first, then all at once. It's the turning point. That's when everything changes, even if you're not ready to admit it yet. Respect is the foundation of emotional connection. When it's present, love flows naturally. When it's gone, even the strongest emotions become heavy, one-sided, and exhausting. It doesn't matter how much history you share, how many memories you hold on to, or how deeply you believe in what you once had. Without mutual respect, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in an emotional negotiation where only one party is still participating. The mistake many men make is thinking they can earn back respect through more sacrifice, more effort, or more emotional labor. But respect isn't won through submission, it's maintained through balance. The moment she stops speaking to you with care, stops listening to you with presence, or starts treating your consistency as something disposable, she is communicating something deeper than words ever could, that she no longer sees you as someone who matters. And it is your responsibility, not hers, to recognize that moment as the point of no return. You cannot build emotional security in a space where you're no longer regarded as essential. And the hardest part isn't walking away, it's admitting to yourself that staying has become an act of self-betrayal. You try to remember who she used to be, how she used to look at you, how things felt before everything shifted. But that's memory talking, not reality. The moment you start clinging to the past to justify staying in the present, you've already abandoned your own emotional clarity. Recognizing the loss of mutual respect doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're finally seeing things as they are, not as you hoped they would be. You can love someone and still outgrow the way they treat you. You can cherish the connection and still decide that your peace matters more than proving your worth to someone who stopped seeing it. This is emotional maturity. This is the discipline most men were never taught. To not chase love where it's no longer being returned. To not pour effort into a cup that only leaks. To not confuse loyalty with self-neglect. You'll notice it in small ways first. The indifference in her tone, the disinterest in your words, the way your presence no longer lights up her eyes. And you'll try to rationalize it. Maybe she's tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's just a phase. But deep down, you know. You feel the emotional gap growing wider, the warmth turning into obligation, the connection fading into cold routine. That's not just distance, that's detachment from her end. And once respect is gone, love starts to suffocate under the weight of resentment and indifference. It's in that moment when your soul feels the absence of respect even louder than the presence of affection that you must choose yourself. Not in anger, not in pride, but in strength. Because staying where you're not respected doesn't preserve the relationship, it destroys your self-worth. Detaching emotionally begins when you stop waiting for her to return to who she was and start honoring who you need to be. When you see that the loss of her respect doesn't define you, but your response to it will. The man who chooses his peace over being tolerated is the man who finally understands his value. Emotional detachment is not just about walking away physically. That's the surface level move, the visible act. But the real work, the deeper transformation happens in the mind. It happens when you start withdrawing your emotional investment, your thoughts, your mental energy, your constant replays of what was, what could have been, and what you wish would change. Too many men leave their relationship but remain mentally and emotionally trapped in it. They're no longer there in body, but every part of their inner world still revolves around her. That's not detachment, that's delayed suffering. The woman who no longer values you may still occupy your thoughts. You might still feel the urge to check her social media, replay conversations, dissect her tone, wonder if she misses you, if she regrets it, if she'll ever come back. These thoughts feel involuntary. They creep in during quiet moments and grip you tightly. And if you're not careful, they keep you emotionally tethered to someone who's already moved on. This is where the hard truth comes in. You cannot heal in the same emotional environment that broke you. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's realizing that every second you spend mentally circling her is a second stolen from your own growth. And the only way to fully detach is to take back your energy, not just the physical routines, but your emotional routines. That includes the habits of fantasizing about closure, hoping for a turnaround, or waiting for a sign that she still cares. Let go of those habits. They are quiet forms of self-abandonment. Because when you stay emotionally loyal to someone who's already stopped seeing your worth, you are participating in your own neglect. You're continuing the pattern of placing her needs, her feelings, and her opinions above your own well-being. That's what makes detachment so difficult. It feels like betrayal, but it's actually self-respect. You have to understand that your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to recognize it. You're not emotionally weak because you care deeply. That care, that intensity, that's a strength. But it has to be directed towards someone who respects it. And more importantly, It has to be preserved for yourself. You can't keep pouring your emotional energy into a space where it's not being received, respected, or reciprocated. So stop checking her online status. Stop imagining how she'll feel when she sees you thriving. Stop crafting scenarios in your mind where she wakes up to what she lost. Every one of those thoughts keeps you in orbit around her emotional world. And that's not your world anymore. Reclaim it. Reclaim your thoughts. Reclaim your time. This isn't about pretending she never mattered. It's about understanding that she no longer gets to control the space she once occupied in your mind. And that space, your inner peace, is too sacred to lease out to someone who no longer values you. Detachment also requires discipline. You'll have moments of weakness, days where your mind slips, where you miss her, where the pain reopens. But those moments are not signals to go back. They're tests to see if you're strong enough to keep moving forward. Every time you choose your peace over your longing, you grow stronger. Every time you silence the urge to reach out, you become more grounded. Detachment is not a one-time decision. It's a repeated action, a commitment to yourself. You must be ruthless with your focus. Replace the emotional investment you gave to her with investment in yourself. Channel that energy into your purpose, your goals, your growth. Let the silence between you be filled with the sound of your own evolution. And when your mind finally starts to quiet, when the constant need for answers fades, you'll realize something profound. Detachment wasn't the end. It was the beginning of you coming back to yourself. One of the most difficult steps in emotionally detaching from a woman who no longer values you is confronting the illusion. Not the relationship as it is now, but the version you created in your mind, the one that kept you holding on longer than you should have. This illusion is powerful. It's the memory of how she used to make you feel, how things used to be in the beginning, the early days when love felt effortless and real. But that version of her, the version who looked at you with admiration, who treated your words like they mattered, who made you feel like a priority, doesn't exist anymore. And perhaps, if you're honest with yourself, she hasn't existed for a while. The danger of emotional attachment lies not in the woman herself, but in the fantasy we construct around her. We romanticize her potential. We hold on to the glimpses of the past while ignoring the reality of the present. We excuse neglect, justify disrespect, and rationalize coldness, all because we're chasing something that once felt right. But here's the truth you have to face with brutal honesty. People show you who they are, and when their actions no longer match the connection you remember, it's not a rough patch, it's a reveal. You can't detach emotionally if you're still clinging to the version of her that lived in your hopes. That version, the one who once made you feel like you were the center of her world, no longer exists, and she may have only existed briefly, if ever. Sometimes we fall more in love with the idea of a person than the person themselves. And when they start to drift, we hold tighter, not to them, but to the dream we're terrified to let go of. But here's the reality. When you strip away the excuses, the justifications, and the nostalgia, what remains is the woman standing in front of you right now, distant, indifferent, dismissive. And if that reality doesn't reflect mutual love, mutual respect, and mutual effort, then you owe it to yourself to stop living in the fantasy. You cannot build emotional clarity on a foundation of denial. This isn't easy. Breaking the fantasy feels like grieving a second time. You grieve the woman she was, and then you grieve the future you imagine with her. But detachment requires that grief. It demands that you face the truth, however painful it may be, and stop hoping for a version of her that no longer aligns with the woman she's become. You cannot emotionally detach from someone you're still trying to resurrect in your mind. The process of breaking the fantasy begins when you stop interpreting her lack of effort as a cry for help and start seeing it for what it is, a lack of interest, a lack of care, or a shift in priorities that no longer include you. It's not always malicious. Sometimes people just change. But change without communication, change without compassion, change that leaves you questioning your worth, that's not something you're meant to endure. That's something you're meant to walk away from. When you confront reality, things become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop hoping for texts that don't come. You stop analyzing cold responses. You stop making excuses for the silence. And in that clarity, you begin to heal. You begin to pull your emotional energy away from her and place it back where it belongs, within yourself. Breaking the fantasy is the most liberating part of detachment, because once the illusion fades, you stop waiting, you stop reaching, you stop needing her to be anything other than what she's already shown you. And in that acceptance, you finally find your freedom. It's not about hating her. It's about no longer needing her to be something she's not. One of the most important truths a man must face when detaching from a woman who no longer values him is that he has an identity beyond the relationship. It's easy to forget that. When you've invested so much of yourself into someone, your time, energy, emotions, and dreams, you begin to blur the line between who you are and who you are with her. She becomes the center of your emotional world. You shape your days around her mood, your goals around her support, and your sense of self-worth around her validation. But when she no longer values you, all of that begins to unravel. And if you're not careful, so does your sense of self. That's why emotional detachment is not just about letting her go, it's about finding yourself again. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were put on hold, muted, or completely forgotten in the pursuit of maintaining something that had already lost its foundation. When a woman stops respecting you, it doesn't just hurt, it shakes your identity. You start questioning your worth, your masculinity, your ability to be loved. But that's not clarity. That's emotional distortion. That's the aftershock of being devalued by someone you gave too much power to. The truth is, your identity existed before her, and it will exist long after. You are not a product of how she sees you. You're not defined by her approval, her attention, or her presence. And when you begin to remember that, when you begin to see yourself outside of the relationship, you start to gain the strength needed to truly detach. You start to understand that your life has meaning that isn't contingent on being loved by her. And here's where the transformation begins. You stop asking questions like, why didn't she see my value? And start asking, why did I forget it myself? That shift is everything. Because emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen. It means you stop shrinking to fit into the narrow space she left for you. It means you rebuild your identity on something solid. Your character, your principles, your purpose, not on her shifting moods or fading interests. A man who reclaims his identity becomes dangerous in the best way possible. He no longer moves from desperation or fear. He becomes grounded, focused, centered. He stops chasing validation and starts living in alignment with who he truly is. That's when the emotional hold she once had begins to loosen. Not because you forced yourself to forget her, but because you finally remembered yourself. Reconnecting with your identity requires discipline. It means spending time alone, not just physically, but mentally, turning down the noise, getting clear on what matters to you outside of her, what drives you, what excites you, what challenges you to grow. These are the questions you have to ask yourself daily. You have to become a man whose sense of worth isn't borrowed from anyone else, especially not someone who failed to appreciate it. It also means setting new emotional boundaries, not just with her, but with yourself. No more chasing, no more fantasizing, no more molding yourself into someone who might win her back. That version of you, the one who compromised his peace to be tolerated, has to go. And in his place, a new version is born, a man who values his time, his energy, his vision, a man who understands that love should never cost you your identity. You don't heal by getting her back. You heal by getting you back. You heal by stepping back into your power, by living with integrity, by surrounding yourself with people who see your worth without needing to be convinced. And the more you return to yourself, the more her absence stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a necessary turning point. Detaching emotionally from a woman who no longer values you is not a singular decision. It's a journey. And like all meaningful journeys, it requires time, intentional effort, and above all, patience with yourself. This final stage isn't about forgetting her, it's not about pretending the pain never existed or forcing yourself to be over it by some arbitrary deadline. It's about committing to a healing process that may be slow, uncomfortable, and unpredictable, but absolutely worth it. Healing doesn't follow a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong, focused, and indifferent to the past. Other days, her memory will hit you without warning. A song, a scent, a place you used to go together, and it will sting. You'll feel that old emotional gravity trying to pull you back. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign that you care deeply. But caring deeply is not a reason to remain stuck. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then continue forward. Part of healing is learning how to sit with the discomfort without letting it define your actions. It means resisting the urge to reach out when you're lonely, to check her social media when you're curious, to reopen wounds just to feel something familiar. You must become the guardian of your peace. That means choosing discipline over impulse, especially in moments when your emotions try to convince you that going backward is easier than moving forward. You have to make peace with the silence where her voice used to be, the silence where your thoughts about her used to live. That silence can feel unbearable at first, but eventually it becomes something sacred. It's in that quiet that you begin to rediscover yourself, your true self, the man you were before the attachment clouded your vision. You begin to fill that space not with memories of her, but with purpose, with growth, with meaningful connections that reflect who you are becoming. Healing also involves forgiveness, not just of her, but of yourself. Forgive yourself for staying too long, for loving too hard, for ignoring the signs, for thinking you could fix something that was never your burden to carry. That forgiveness doesn't make you weak, it sets you free. It allows you to stop punishing yourself for the love you gave and instead start honoring it. Because the love wasn't the problem, the direction you gave it was. The more you heal, the less you seek closure from her. You stop needing explanations. You stop replaying the past to find hidden meanings. You stop assigning your worth based on her ability to recognize it. Closure stops being something you get from her and becomes something you give yourself. You look in the mirror and realize you didn't lose her. She lost the version of you that would have done anything to make it work. And that version of you is gone, not because he was broken, but because he outgrew the need to prove himself where he was never truly seen. It's during this phase that your emotional detachment matures. What once felt like heartbreak now feels like clarity. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. You no longer measure your healing by how much you miss her, but by how deeply you respect yourself. You begin to attract peace, stability, and self-worth, not because you're pretending to be healed, but because you actually are. And you realize that the real victory wasn't in letting her go. The real victory was in choosing yourself fully, finally, and without apology. Emotional detachment isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of everything that's waiting for you on the other side of your pain. When someone breaks your heart, the natural instinct is to make noise, to respond, to protest, to plead your case. You want to tell her how much she hurt you, how unfair she was, how deeply you loved her, and how she threw it all away. And that instinct is deeply human. It's what we do when we feel pain. We cry out. But there's a deeper form of response, one that doesn't play by the rules she expected. It's silence. Because silence, real silence, when delivered by someone she thought would never stop talking, never stop trying, never stop loving, silence becomes the loudest message of all. You see, when a woman leaves or betrays a man who truly loved her, she usually expects a reaction. She anticipates the texts, the calls, the breakdown. It feeds her ego. It reassures her narrative that she mattered, that she still holds power over him. But when that reaction never comes, when he simply disappears, when he walks away and says nothing, her mind starts to unravel. She starts to wonder if she ever meant anything. Her ego, the very thing that made her act with such casual cruelty, starts to question its throne. That is the beginning of the collapse, not of your heart, but of her illusion. The thing is, Silence isn't passive. It's not cowardly. It's deliberate. It's a man stepping back and saying, you don't get to hear my pain. Not because it doesn't exist. It does. You've been cut open, but you don't hand her the weapon and then point to the wound. You don't let the person who hurt you feel needed by your reaction. You take that wound and you bleed in private. You let time scab it over. And while she waits for the echo of your voice, she's left only with her own. In the space where your words used to be, she hears her own thoughts, and they're loud. Because without your voice drowning them out, she starts to hear the truth about what she did. She starts to feel the weight of it. That silence becomes a mirror. And in that reflection, she doesn't see the powerful woman she thought she was. She sees the one who lost someone who would have given her everything. And she starts to wonder why you're not broken, why you're not crawling back, why you haven't tried to fix what she destroyed. And that's the moment she begins to feel it, the fracture in her ego. Because she didn't